Hello, everybody. I'm Andy from ThinkMo. CCIE courses are now being taught. As of today, I'll share some with you. Technology related to CCNA, CCNP, and CCIE. Our topic today is Confessions of Type 2 LSA in OSPF. It is actually a Type 2 LSA. What exactly does it describe? So the next thing, we will use the following questions. Learn about Type 2 LSAs. The first thing we need to know is what is LSA. It's called Link State Advertised. Link Status Notification. It comes from what we've been talking about. Link State Routing Protocol. Because we all know that. For routing protocols, there are link state and distance vectors. OSPF means belonging to. Link State Routing Protocol. Talk about link state. Is to describe some specific link state or other topology information. So what is the use of LSA? Is used to describe topology information, routing information. These announcements about the status of the link. And then we're going to look at it. What does Type 2 LSA describe? In the process, it also involves topological information and routing information. Of course, Type 2 LSA are relatively special, except for the basic topology and routing information. It describes a little too much information. We need one by one. Let's explain it accordingly. Here we can see a Type 2 LSA. We also call it a network LSA. So we can do that with a command. This is called Display OSPF LSDB Network. To view the link status information, the first thing we can see LSID. We were in the previous topic. It was explained that it's really us. Name of the mentioned LSA. So how is it named? For Type 2 LSA, it starts with what we mentioned. IP address of the DR interface. To name it. In this topology, we can see that I'm on AR1 and AR2. IP addresses are configured. One is 12.1.1.1. This is the G000 port of AR1. This AR2 is G000 port 12.1.1.2. An IP address like that. It describes the IP address of the DR interface. This is its LSID. So that means that AR2 is DR. We can actually check it out. Now we can see the AR2 device. It has a state of DR. And then we can keep going. View the Type 2 LSA. You can see the RTR of ADV. It is the notification router. It was notified by DR 2.2.2.2. LSID. It is called the IP address of the DR interface. ADV's router is advertised by DR. One might wonder why. Advertise the IP address of your own interface. I don't know if you remember that. For those of you who haven't seen it, go and see it. About DR preemption and the basic concept of DR in the topic. It talks about something called a pseudonode. This is what we call the virtual router concept. This virtual router in MA or NBMA. In the network environment, you need a virtual router here. The concept of pseudo-nodes. Let's say I drag out a router. You can understand that there is a router between AR1 and AR2. This router is one virtual OSPF router. So in the process, we talked about the DR advertising, the IP address of its own interface. Let's figure it out first. The purpose of its interface IP address. On the OSPF network, yes. The corresponding identifier of RID. To uniquely identify the OSPF router. You have a virtual router. Whether it's real or not, it exists. Does it have to be described by RID? So this virtual router, it needs to be notified by DR. Then you use the IP address of the DR interface. It's RID, which means that is this one. Unique ID of the router. So in an LSA like this, in fact, we can understand the DR announcement. It's actually in the OSPF books. There is no mention of the so-called pseudonode concept. But on a practical analytical level, it exists. And then we'll come back to that. In addition to this information, it also describes the net mask. Network mask. So what does it do? LSID plus the network mask. Do that AND operation. You can get the routing information. Therefore, type-2 LSA only advertise pseudo-nodes. Routing information is also advertised. Routing information is really about AR1 network segment connected to AR2. Set the IP address of the interface. Do the computation with the net mask. It tells us that we're in a network. Among other things, we also saw the attached router. It refers to which router is connected. We actually saw that. One is connected to 2.2.2.2. One is connected to 1.1.1.1. In other words, who is this fake node connected to? Now AR1, RID. The unique identifier is 1.1.1.1. This is the router AR2. The unique identifier is 1.1.1.1. So this router, it is announced that it is connected to 1.1.1.1. The other is connected to 2.2.2.2. But here's the key thing. Type-2 LSA describe who pseudo-nodes are. Now we can see 2.2.2.2. 1.1.1.1 and its routing information. This is the Type-2 LSA we mentioned. What exactly is described? And then we're going to look at that. When Type-2 LSAs are generated, we can take a look at it. When do we have the concept of pseudo-nodes? Certainly in the presence of DR. Because the DR will notify this virtual router. That is to say, the pseudonode that we're talking about. Well, since we have DR to announce this virtual router, so we need to know under what circumstances would there be an election? Or there will be the concept of DR. In the network environment of MA or ENDMA, this will produce DR. This is what we are talking about. When Type-2 LSA are generated, MA is the broadcast network. NBMA is what we call similar to ATM network environment. MA is still mainstream. It's called broadcast. It will produce us the Type-2 LSA mentioned, because it needs to be announced by DR. This virtual router indicates the IP address of the DR interface as its unique identifier. As for why use this virtual router, welcome to my previous installments on pseudo-node, or why can't the DR be preempted. That's all for today. If there are any other skills you would like to learn, feel free to leave a comment or send me a private message. If you're interested in what I'm talking about, hope to like and subscribe more. Thank you. See you next time.